Welcome back to ReZero, Anime Review Episode 38. This is discussing the 50th and final episode of Season 2 for ReZero. Yes, the last one. It's called Offbeat Steps Under the Moonlight. This one, that's pretty much chapters 8 and 9 of the light novel. Yeah, they decided not to adapt the interlude or the extra stuff that happened afterwards. There is some stuff cut from this particular thing. Mostly some stuff I kind of forgot happened. But there is one little plot point they did basically mention here, which I'm not that surprised they mentioned it here. And then they don't do anything with it afterwards, which I thought was kind of weird. Episode picks up exactly where last week's episode left off, where you have Subaru and Beatrice show up, and they deal with the Great Rabbit. Now, how they deal with it is quite interesting. First, they basically fire a bunch of these purple icicles around the actual, the rabbits. Well, first they basically eliminate all of them, and then basically having, Subaru be a distraction to the lure and all of them to make this gigantic football field style thing. And then after the whole thing is covered, and of course Amelia picks the thing up with her, frees the whole thing, and then Beatrice sends them to another dimension. A forbidden space, mind you, where they'll never return. And as far as I've heard in the light novels, the Great Rabbit has never returned. And then, right after this, we have it where we have Roswell pretty much, seeing Echidna, her body anyways, surprisingly still intact after 400 years. I would have thought, though, normally over time, basically, this will be like a skeleton, maybe like ashes, but no. Still fully intact, still as lovely as ever. My guess is due to being a witch, per se, and she probably cast maybe a spell or some kind of concoction to keep her body intact after 400 years. And he's very happy to see her. And of course, he mentions to Beatrice that he technically is the same Roswell 400 years in the past. And because of the fact he did something wrong, basically it's implied, basically based on his dialogue, that he wants Beatrice to punish him. So she's like, kneel. And then she takes off her shoe, and smacks him across the face. And then not long after this, everybody gets a chance to beat him up. Not only Subaru, but also Garfield, Francesca, Petra, even, Ram herself basically didn't really need to because she already fought him anyways. But pretty much everybody did. And then she's lying on his lap. Now, it is basically kind of interesting though. They don't explain exactly when in the world that everybody else got here. In the case of Beatrice, and also Beatrice is sitting on... Also, you have Subaru sitting on the ground, and Beatrice is sitting in his lap. Now, there is some stuff they cut from me around the line that basically they mentioned the fact that Beatrice basically burned through her mana reserves battling the Great Rabbit, and she also can only cast basic spells now. Which maybe they said they cut it because they probably felt this was probably unnecessary for her to mention that, but yeah. Also, before I continue with this scene, there's one brief scene which I'm kind of surprised they kept this in, though they don't exactly include the stuff they have a little narration explaining this later, where you have Amelia talking to Subaru, and she reveals she's pregnant, which Subaru's like, huh? What? You're pregnant? And she's like, oh, it's because he kissed. And he basically has the same explanation he has in the book, maybe it was come from storks or growing cabbages. And she's like, oh, but we kissed. So somehow that basically made her pregnant. And he basically tells Puck, I hate you, Puck. Because it's a lie. That's not how women get pregnant. Yep. So, by the way, they actually cut out a line from the actual... This is actually an explanation later via narration that Subaru did talk to her later after basically after the whole thing happened next. After the end of the episode. Where it explains that, yeah, that's not how babies work. It's do something else. it's a great scene, and it's first time I can think of this series where Amelia actually blushes. Not only her cheeks, but her ears are red too, which that is quite something. Because she's quite embarrassed by this. And after the Roswell, of course, basically, after he gets the crap out of him, he then takes off his shirt reveal. He has got a seal in his chest. And according to Beatrice, it is a oath via curse, meaning he cannot harm any one of these people. And everybody forgives him except for Petra, because he was going to harm her family, thanks to basically what happened. So there's that. And then, of course, Amelia's like, well, you're always like really weird. He hasn't said I'm sorry yet. And then eventually he does. Oh, and by the way, off on the bench nearby is Rem, lying down. And here's kind of the thing that they don't really include in the anime. I don't think, even if I remember, the light novel doesn't bother explaining this either. Now, this was shown early on in the season. I think this was either in book 10, I think it was, where Ram basically met up with her sister while she's unconscious. And, well, nothing is said to her. Also, Ram is not wearing her maid outfit. Yeah, because while the whole battle was going on with the Great Rabbit, she was a bloody mess. So she basically is able to forgive later. And then, of course, well, then not long after this particular scene, we have a very interesting cutaway to the Mallard Manor. Now, this is actually this is actually something they cut from the actual book itself, because in the book, basically, there's actually a little bit more here, where the reason why they go here, because basically they mentioned their branch family. That they actually do mention they're a branch family of the Mathers, but them getting there, that was actually cut from the anime. I'm not really sure why, but it was. And I have now, and of course, then we have, and now why are they here? Why are they borrowing this particular mansion? Well, the reason is because Subaru is getting knighted. He's becoming an official knight, and he talks to Roswell for a bit, and Roswell has to keep an eye on him, which, okay, fine. And then we have this wonderful sequence, basically, like, no dialogue from none of the characters except for Subaru and Amelia. We see Garfield in a suit, and he basically is not like he's like adjusting his bow tie. We see Otto wearing a different hat than he was before. We see Petra wearing a great looking dress. And we see Rem, for the first time since episode 2 of this season, her in her maid's attire. And she's just sitting in a chair. And it's great. And basically Rem and Ram basically are near each other the whole episode. They're never separated from each other. And then we have the ceremony itself, which, great sequence. And of course they have a flashback of Subaru talking about his parents. He swears on his parents. And of course, Amelia gets surprised about that, but the ceremony goes off perfectly fine. Subaru is now officially recognized as Amelia's knight. And then, of course, later on, we actually have Subaru outside, basically soaking the atmosphere. And him and Amelia talk, and they have a pinky promise where basically he'll meet up with her in her room. Possibly something, let's say, adult. Possibly. And then not long after this, we have this wonderful sequence with no dialogue. First, we see Francesca trying to stop her younger brother from drinking alcohol, which I thought was so hilarious. And then we see Beatrice dancing with Petra, which this was quite nice. I love this. This was a great little sequence. And we see Rem and Ram, basically, like, all these kids are near her. And they're probably asking, why is she asleep for? Well, it's because of the Archbishop of Gluttony. He's the one who did it. I have read a line he does, basically, Super does meet later on in the light novels. I haven't read that for yet because there's no English translation of these books yet. So, I know I'm getting kind of ahead of myself, but I shouldn't basically mention anymore because I got flack for doing this for High School DxD by mentioning stuff that happened later on in light novels that I haven't read yet, so I shouldn't go mentioning further that. So, and then we have the episode end with Subaru and Amelia dancing. An absolute fantastic little thing to see. because, well, he admitted his love for her. It's unknown if she felt the same way. It's implied she does, but she never said anything much of it at all. Maybe she explains it a little bit later. And that's the episode. We have this wonderful, like, old flashing of the party, which is great. And, yeah, great. This episode was a really good episode. And the pacing of this one was actually pretty damn good. And nothing really wrong with this episode. Yes, they did cut some stuff here. Some mild stuff here and there. I kind of think, though, that with the couple stuff they did adapt here, like the interlude chapter and the extra, that could be easily good for, like, a good standalone episode if they want to. But as far as I can tell for this, episode 50 is definitely the final episode of the season. So, that's one series basically concluded for now. Now, unknown exactly if we're going to get season 3 or not. I will get my final thoughts followed by what you were after this one. For episode 39, 40 will discuss the shorts, the ReZero shorts that came out with these episodes. Because I figure, though, now would be an absolute perfect time to discuss them. Well, at least watch them because, well, I did kind of the same thing when the first half of the season concluded, where I discussed those shorts right after the first half of the season concluded, and I'm going to do it again with this half. So I'll probably do it a bit later, because the next thing I'm going to watch is the next episode for 7 Deadly Sins, and I'll basically, for next video, I'm going to do this one, it's going to be my final thoughts on season 2, and other stuff. It'll be episode 39, and 40 will be the break time shorts for second half of season 2. Yep. So, it's you in the next video. Bye.